situation at the border, which has seen record numbers of migrants crossing into the U.S. Biden has taken an increasingly forceful stance on enforcement in recent months, calling for cooperation in passing tougher border control measures, even as congressional Republicans thwarted a recent border security bill.
Here's what I would say to Mr. Trump. Instead of playing politics with this issue, instead of telling members of Congress to block this legislation, join me, or I'll join you, in telling the Congress to pass this bipartisan border security bill. We can do it together.
Trump, who's seeking to be the GOP presidential nominee to run against Biden in November, meanwhile, had a singular focus of his own.
Biden migrant crime. It's a new form of vicious violation to our country. It's migrant crime.
The arrival of the two men at the border comes at a time Americans are citing immigration as among their top concerns. After the Alabama Supreme Court ruled frozen embryos have the same rights as children, legislators in the House of Representatives there passed a bill aimed at getting clinics in the state to resume IVF treatment. Kyle Gassett of Troy Public Radio reports the bill now moves to the Senate.
Doctors and clinics had suspended IVF services for patients following the ruling, fearing criminal charges or civil liability if embryos were damaged or destroyed. After hearing complaints and heartbreaking stories from constituents who'd been denied IVF treatment by major clinics in the state, lawmakers in the Alabama House of Representatives passed the bill with a large majority. The bill's sponsors say this is a temporary fix and that a longer conversation and debate over the legal status of frozen embryos will be happening later. Alabama's Governor Kay Ivey has already indicated she's ready to sign legislation that would allow IVF treatments to resume statewide. From MPR News, I'm Kyle Gassett in Montgomery, Alabama.
Lawmakers in Louisiana have entered a special session on crime after passing a bill that would expand execution methods in the state to include electrocution and nitrogen gas. Molly Ryan with member station WRKF has more.
Louisiana's majority Republican legislature gave final approval to a bill that would add the electric chair and nitrogen gas hypoxia as methods the state can use to execute people. The bill would also hide information from the public about the drug manufacturers and materials involved in an execution. The controversial proposal is supported by Governor Jeff Landry and was a focus point of his special session on crime. Louisiana hasn't executed anyone since 2010, but Landry is looking to start things up again. He's expected to sign the bill next week, along with several other tough on crime proposals. For NPR News, I'm Molly Ryan in Baton Rouge.
On Wall Street, the Dow rose 47 points. The S&P closed up 26 points. You're listening to NPR. Game maker Electronic Arts is the latest tech company to announce job cuts. The company says it's cutting about 5% of its workforce, or around 670 employees, in the technology and gaming sector after a surge in hiring in recent years. It comes just days after Sony said it intends to cut about 900 jobs in its PlayStation division. The National Weather Service has issued a blizzard warning for California's Lake Tahoe Basin as a mix of snow combined with strong winds gusting up to 65 miles an hour hits the area. Member station KUNR, Sophia Holm has more.
While the storm is set to be the strongest for this year, the Lake Tahoe Basin has seen similar conditions in previous years, says Jeremy Linder with the California Department of Transportation.
Last year definitely gave our crews a lot of good experience for heavy snowfall in large amounts.
Linder says one accident involving a semi-truck early Thursday morning caused a brief closure on the main road in and out of the area. The Lake Tahoe Basin is most well known for its ski resorts, which may have closures due to the weather conditions. Palisades Tahoe, located on the California side, has stated that their upper mountain lifts are closed due to high winds. Residents and visitors are urged to limit travel and prepare adequately for the weather conditions. For NPR News, I'm Sophia Holman, Reno.
And not an overwhelmingly surprising finding, but human-caused climate change is not helping the nation's ski areas. That's according to a new estimate. U.S. ski areas lost $5 billion from 2000 to 2019. With estimates, losses will continue to mount based on global warming. I'm Jack Speer, NPR News in Washington.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation, supporting books, radio, podcasts, film, television, theater, and more to bridge science and the humanities. And the listeners who support this NPR station.
For NPR News in the Twin Cities, I'm Perry Finelli. Minnesota finance officials say despite an improved state budget outlook, a measure of fiscal restraint will be required this legislative session. A new economic forecast pegs a projected budget surplus at $3.7 billion by the middle of 2025. but that dips in later years. Minnesota Management and Budget Commissioner Aaron Campbell says it's a reason for the legislature to hold back on new spending this year.
While projected budget surpluses in each biennium grow in this forecast, it is worth noting that caution should still be exercised this legislative session when it comes to ongoing spending. The existence of a structural imbalance will continue to be of note to our rating agencies, and the imbalance will need to be addressed in the next biennial budget.
The economic forecast is the baseline lawmakers use when making key decisions. A 2-alarm fire early this afternoon destroyed a South Minneapolis homeless encampment. Matt Sepik reports.
Flames tore through Camp Nenukasi near Abbott Northwestern Hospital, displacing an estimated 50 people. Minneapolis Fire Chief Brian Tyner says 2 were treated at the scene for minor burns and smoke inhalation, but there were no serious injuries. He says numerous propane canisters in the encampment made the fire particularly dangerous, but crews knocked down the flames in about 30 minutes.
We were able to protect the adjacent structures and keep any fire from getting into any of the houses that surrounded the property. However, there was some minor damage to the siding on 2 of the structures.
The fire's cause remains unknown. A group of unhoused people moved to the city-owned lot in early February after city workers evicted them from 2 other properties that week. I'm Matt Sepik, Minneapolis.
State forecast calling for mostly clear skies tonight. Lows will range from the mid-20s to low 30s, 10 to 20 near Lake Superior. Friday, sunny, highs in the 40s in northern Minnesota, mid-50s to low 60s in the south. Saturday, mostly cloudy, highs in the upper 30s to mid-40s north, near 60 south. This is MPR News.
That buzz you get on the first day of a new chapter in your life. Salim Ez felt it. It was 2019, and he'd made the decision. He enlisted in the United States Army. Ez's first posting as an American soldier, Fort Stewart, about 40 miles southwest of Savannah, Georgia. It's the largest Army installation east of the Mississippi. It covers almost 280,000 acres and is home to approximately 15,000 active duty soldiers and 16,000 of their family members. Ez, as an unmarried young man, was assigned to soldier barracks.
Concrete, white walls, gray floors, just that normal kind of like tile.
Like a 70s dorm room, he says.
2 soldiers per room. There's not really a divide between your space and their space. Very tiny kitchenette, no range, no stove, a microwave on top of the fridge, and then a small bathroom.
Ez took it in stride. He knew you don't exactly join the Army to live in the lap of luxury. But there was one thing.
There was definitely like a little bit of a kind of a tainty smell in the air, if you will. Kind of sharp, like something was growing maybe sometimes.
Something was and is growing in the barracks. Mold. On the walls, in the HVAC system, in the bathrooms, showers, toilets, closets. The mold grew on bags, turned mattresses green and black. Another soldier who spoke to military.com said mold, quote, consumed his room.
Definitely the first time I saw the barracks, I was like a little in shock. Definitely. 100%.
This is On Point. I'm Meghna Chakrabarty. Substandard military housing is not a new problem for the Department of Defense. In fact, it is a very old one, going back decades, well into the 1990s, and it has caused a national outcry before. In 2019, Reuters uncovered fraud on a massive scale. Private contractor Balfour Beatty Communities, which managed 43,000 homes for military families, was found to have falsified maintenance records, ignored maintenance requests, even pleas from families to clean up homes riddled with mold, asbestos, crumbling ceilings, and filth. Following a congressional investigation and multiple lawsuits, Balfour Beatty pleaded guilty to fraud and in 2021 agreed to pay the Defense Department more than $64 million in fines. Then Army Secretary Ryan McCarthy vowed to improve the DoD's oversight of housing contractors. He pledged to find the money to build new family housing, and the Army began requiring home inspections for safety hazards. Quote, "There was a breakdown over the last decade," McCarthy told Reuters. "These are hard lessons learned, but we're trying to dig out quickly," end quote. Well, more than a decade before that, in 2007, the Washington Post broke a story about horrendous living conditions in barracks for wounded soldiers at Walter Reed Army Medical Center. In the congressional hearings that swiftly followed, lawmakers didn't even try to hold back their anger.
I think this is a massive failure of competence in management and command.
Yes, sir.
When was the first time you heard about these kinds of problems?
When I saw the articles in the Washington Post.
That was New Hampshire Representative Paul Hodes at those 2007 hearings. He was grilling Lieutenant General Kevin Kiley, then Army Surgeon General and former commander at Walter Reed. Kiley said that even though he lived across the street from Walter Reed, as commander, he never personally inspected the barracks. He had subordinate commanders across the Army's medical command who did that. But lawmakers, including Ohio Congressman Mike Turner, couldn't quite believe that the chain of information within the chain of command had broken so completely that Kiley had no clue that soldiers who'd fought and been wounded in Iraq and Afghanistan were trying to convalesce in Bethesda military housing infested with mold and mice.
You said you do not do inspections. I don't think anyone would think that the system that you have in place as a manager of an organization would be sufficient if your answer is that you don't do inspections, but yet you still did not know. I mean, there's something wrong with the organizational structure if we all have to hear from the Washington Post.
Yes, sir.
So clearly, many times over the past many years, the Defense Department has been made aware of systemic and bureaucratic failures in its oversight of military housing. And yet somehow, the same military capable of launching highly sophisticated coordinated strikes anywhere in the world within minutes continues to have difficulty keeping track of housing conditions on its own domestic bases. Back at Fort Stewart in Georgia in 2019, and more than a decade after the Walter Reed scandal, infantryman Salim Ez says the barracks were as bad as ever. Recall, as an unmarried soldier, Ez was living in what's called unaccompanied housing, or UH, as it's called within the military. And these barracks were not getting the same kind of national media attention that Walter Reed or the family housing crisis had. With the exception of military.com, the Army Times, and other military press, plus dedicated reporting by local journalists living near the bases, Ez says it felt like the conditions where he lived were often met with a shrug.
It was like, well, yeah, duh, like, what are we going to do about it? The reaction was like futility, essentially.
The Army did make efforts to remedy Fort Stewart's broken down housing. In October 2022, a Department of Public Works team spent 90 days on site inspecting and remediating more than 1,100 cases of mold. Base leaders even went so far as to order a stand-down day for senior non-commissioned officers to address concerns raised by soldiers. At that stand-down day, Command Sergeant Major Quentin Fenderson told the officers that something had snapped in the chain of accountability. Barracks inspections were not happening the way they used to when the officers themselves were fresh recruits.
What's unfortunate about this whole conversation is the fact that everybody in here, at some point in your life, in your career, I should say, somebody came in and checked your room as a soldier.
Why are we not checking our soldiers' rooms? Fenderson said. Quote, I'm going to walk through your barracks. I need you to do your jobs. I'm going to do mine. End quote. Bill McGovern, mold specialist with Fort Stewart's Department of Public Works team, added that beating the mold problem required a team effort from command all the way down to individual soldiers.
We need to hear from the occupants that they have a problem in their room.
Sal Ez says there is an app that soldiers can use to report problems in their rooms. However, it only works for conventional repairs.
You can put like a work order in it and someone will come in and do it. But, people don't have x-ray vision and can see whether or not their HVAC system is working. And that by the time it's a problem, that there's mold everywhere. And those are things that soldiers can't see, but affects them.
That was in October of 2022. At the time, No soldier had reported health issues due to mold, according to an official video posted on Fort Stewart's YouTube page.